A chilling line may soon be crossed. Iran is preparing to carry out what human rights organizations warn could be the first execution tied to the latest wave of nationwide anti-regime protests, sending shockwaves through the international community and escalating fears over Tehran's deepening crackdown. According to Iran Human Rights, IHRNGO, and the National Union for Democracy in Iran, NUFDI, a 26-year-old protester, Irfan Soltani, is scheduled to be hanged on Wednesday after being detained during demonstrations in Karaj last week. Sources cited by IHRNGO said Soltani's family was informed that he had been sentenced to death and that the execution was imminent, though independent verification remains difficult due to severe communication restrictions inside Iran. Mahmoud Amiri Moghadam, director of IHRNGO, warned that the scale and brutality of the current repression echoes some of the darkest chapters in the Islamic Republic's history. In a statement, he said, "The killing of civilian protesters recalls the mass executions of the 1980s, which have been recognized by rights groups as crimes against humanity." He cautioned that the risk of mass and extrajudicial executions is extremely serious and urged the international community to act under the responsibility to protect doctrine to prevent further bloodshed by Iranian authorities and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The NUFDI has appealed for urgent global intervention to stop Soltani's execution, insisting that his only alleged offense was calling for freedom. The group claimed Soltani was denied access to legal counsel and said he was charged with waging war against God, an offense that carries the death penalty under Iranian law. The U.S. Sun and other outlets have reported on the case, but activists stress that details are hard to confirm amid an ongoing internet blackout designed to suppress information about the unrest. What began as anger over a collapsing economy has ignited into a full-blown revolt. The protests, sparked in late December by Iran's deepening economic crisis and the freefall of its national currency, have since morphed into sweeping calls for regime change. Human rights groups paint a grim picture of the crackdown that followed: more than 10,700 arrests and at least 646 deaths, including both protesters and members of the security forces. Numbers that underscore the deadly cost of dissent as the unrest tightens its grip on the nation. The US-based human rights activists news agency, which relies on a network of activists inside Iran and has been accurate during past unrest, reported that hundreds of civilians are among the dead, though the Associated Press has said it cannot independently verify the figures due to restricted access. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly warned Tehran against using lethal force on demonstrators. In comments last week, he said that if Iranian authorities began shooting protesters, the United States would respond militarily. Writing on Truth Social, Trump declared that Iran was looking at freedom like never before and that Washington stood ready to help. The White House later confirmed that Trump was weighing military options, though Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt emphasized that diplomacy remained the administration's preferred path. Trump's rhetoric has drawn criticism from some U.S. lawmakers, including Senator Rand Paul, who argued that military action without congressional approval would violate the Constitution and could backfire by uniting Iranians behind the ruling clerical establishment. Iranian officials, meanwhile, have warned that any U.S. strike would trigger retaliation against American forces in the region. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Tehran is fully prepared for war, while also claiming that communications with Washington remain open, albeit contradictory. Even as unrest grips the nation, Iranian state media is projecting a very different image, broadcasting scenes of massive pro-government rallies as Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei hails them as a warning shot to the United States. The message from the top is one of strength, not concession. But behind the carefully curated images, fear is mounting. With Iran largely sealed off from the outside world, activists warn that executions like Sultani's could signal the opening of a far deadlier chapter, one in which the state's confrontation with its own people turns openly lethal.
Diplomacy is always the first option for the president. He's told all of you last night that what you're hearing publicly from the Iranian regime is quite differently from the messages the administration is receiving privately. And I think the president has an interest in exploring those messages. However, with that said, the president has shown he's unafraid to use military options if and when he deems necessary. And nobody knows that better than Iran. Rates should be lowered, and they should have been lowered a long time ago.
But does he believe in the independence of the Fed, Caroline?
He has, and he's said that many times.
Bloomberg,
go ahead.
The president believes that Jay Powell should go to jail if he lied about the
Eamon, you're yelling out a question that's being asked in a different way, but it's the same exact question as we just answered, and I just answered it. We'll let the Department of Justice determine that.
President Trump strikes off the table in Iran, and does he believe there's a potential path to end the protest there without military action?
Well, I think one thing President Trump is very good at is always keeping all of his options on the table, and airstrikes would be one of the many, many options that are on the table for the commander-in-chief. Diplomacy is always the first option for the president. He's told all of you last night that what you're hearing publicly from the Iranian regime is quite differently from the messages the administration is receiving privately, and I think the president has an interest in exploring those messages. However, with that said, the president has shown he's unafraid to use military options if and when he deems necessary, and nobody knows that better than Iran.
Go
ahead,
Jim. Steve Witkoff talking to the Iranians at the moment.
I understand that Steve Witkoff will continue to be a very important player in diplomacy with respect to Iran. I think the last week has shown that the president made the right, realistic assessment of what needed to take place in Venezuela at this moment in time. And the interim authorities and Delcy Rodriguez and her team have been very cooperative with the United States and the president and his team, as evidenced by the massive energy deal that the president was able to cut with the interim authorities, their commitment to release Venezuelan political prisoners, which we also saw last week. So we've seen a great level of cooperation, and the president expects that to continue. Go ahead. Sorry.
And how soon does he want to see elections in Venezuela?
I think right now it's still too soon to say, and I don't want to set a deadline for the president on that.
What's the meeting this morning with Marco Rubio about Venezuela? What can we see this week on Venezuela? More meetings?
The president meets with the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor daily, sometimes multiple times a day, and so it was on a range of topics, as it always is.
Does President Trump expect on Venezuela? What practical steps would the White House like to see those interim authorities take to stop Iran and Hezbollah from operating in the country, and have those authorities done anything on that yet?
I think right now the main correspondence with the interim authorities is really focused on obviously ensuring stability and prosperity and continued cooperation with respect to energy. As you all know, there was a very powerful and big group of oil executives who were here at the White House on Friday, and so continuing to iron out some of these energy deals. We also have made it very clear, the president's made it very clear, that we don't want to see any more jug boats sailing from Venezuela towards the United States of America, which we have not, frankly, in the last week. President's also made it very clear that only oil tankers that are approved by the United States of America will be flowing from Venezuela, and we will continue to seize ships that are stateless or that are not approved for commerce by the United States.
Kevin. Back to Iran, is the objective in these discussions with Iran still complete denuclearization, or what else is the president looking for as he, engages in these discussions?
Well, he's made it quite clear he certainly doesn't want to see people being killed in the streets of Tehran, and unfortunately that's something we're seeing right now. Kelly.
Caroline, Archbishop Copeland is here today.
I'll get to you, don't worry. Kelly.
Iranian officials today, and has President Trump spoken with Elon Musk about the internet situation there as well?
I understand he has spoken to Elon about that. Yes, he talked to all of you about that on the plane last night. What was your first question, Kelly?
Has Witkoff spoken with Iranian officials today? Could you give any updates updates on those conversations?
I haven't spoken with Mr. Witkoff today about that, but we can certainly get you an answer.
Archbishop Coakley is here. President
Yes,
Trump is meeting with Archbishop
It's of
Coakley.
great interest to you, I'm sure.
Absolutely, and they may be speaking as we're speaking. Can you give us a preview of what they'll be talking about, or will there be a readout as well after they're done of what they discuss?
I can see if the president will provide you a readout. How's that?
Yep, sounds good. And also, President Trump, has he seen the video put out by Jerome Powell on Sunday? And if so, what's his reaction?
That video was put out after I was with the president when Air Force One landed last night, I believe. So I was no longer with him when that video came out. I don't know if he's seen it or not.
Does the president have a dateline or a timeline on Greenland?
No, he has not set a timeline, but